Hello and welcome to the first episode of Buy It Now, the podcast about how to buy American Girl and other things secondhand. And these are just tips and tricks on buying secondhand. Now, this first episode, I hate to say this, but it's gonna be boring because we're talking about the mindset that you have to have. But if you've never bought anything secondhand before, or if you're just starting out buying things secondhand, you're going to want to listen to this episode because I think it's really important to keep all these things in mind when you are looking for items and just various things. So this is a pretty dark question to start off with, but what's going to happen to your collection when you die? When you die, what's going to happen to you? Do you have it in a will? You're going to give it away to somebody? Is it all packaged nicely, or are you just, if you die, it just sort of sits there and your family is left to sell it off to the highest bidder on eBay? It's an important thing to consider because things change hands, and those things can include rare and valuable items that you are looking for. Those items won't stay in one place for long. Things are constantly moving around and being shuffled around. Someone might get that one special prize San Diego Comic-Con exclusive collector doll, but when they die, if they held on to it for that long, when they die, what's going to happen to it then? And then somebody else gets it, and somebody else gets it, and maybe one day it'll make its way to you, obviously. The rarer the thing is, the less likely that is to happen, but it's good to keep in mind that things change hands. So if you're getting frustrated that you just cannot find something, things change hands. People get rid of stuff, people sell stuff, people die, and then their stuff gets sold off, and who knows, you could be owning the only version of one specific doll or item because somebody else kicked the bucket. Which is a bit morbid thinking about it, but people don't have to die for things to change hands. People can sell things, people need money, people get in and out of different interests, and so that is the number one thing to remember, is that your rare item it's still rare, but it's not impossible to find, probably. It's probably not impossible to find unless you just have some giant, lofty, obtainable goal. The second thing that I'd like to talk about is something that I think a lot of people miss is when you're looking for something. Okay, we're going to cover in this podcast series, we're going to cover a bunch of different places where you can buy stuff. There's online places, there's in-person places. You can buy stuff. It is very, very easy to buy things, and it is very easy to find things in a multitude of different places. However, you need to have a sort of system and set of expectations when you're looking for an item about where you might find it. Now, I call this thinking, where did it come from, not where is it? Let's say that I am looking for an American Girl book. We're not looking for a doll, we're just looking for an American Girl book that is out of print currently. And we don't want to get it from online, directly from American Girl. So we go to our secondhand retailers. We go to our used bookstores and our thrift stores. But let's say that I'm in the middle of Spain. Spain probably doesn't have much American Girl anything floating around in their physical secondhand markets, because Spain is not in the US, and it's also not near Germany where American Girl was originally produced. It has no connection to American Girl, and that's a little bit of a crazy example, but I think you get what I mean, is that your location to where these products are can greatly impact the likelihood of you owning the item. For example, there was just a video on YouTube about this guy who paid for an auction that was in Japan of a super rare Nintendo DS game. And he paid for it, but that was all the way in Japan. He never would have gotten that anywhere else except for that one auction site in Japan. And so just remember to think about, where is your item coming from, because things do change hands. Your proximity to an American Girl hotspot, whether it's a store or the company headquarters in Middleton, Wisconsin, can greatly impact your chance of finding American Girl things. Now, you can find things everywhere else in the U.S. and even in Canada if you were near some of their Indigo chapters boutiques, you might find some items in resale shops and around that area. But it is very important to know that the people who find the $1 dolls at Goodwill might be closer in proximity to an American Girl hotspot, either a store or something else. They might be closer to that hotspot, so there's more supply and the dolls aren't nearly as valuable as they would be in a smaller town where there is one American Girl doll being donated by someone who definitely knows how much it's worth. The third thing I'd like to talk about today is patience. This is something I am constantly typing out on the American Girl subreddit, is patience, patience, patience. You can get just about anything if you are patient enough. If you wait long enough, if you save up the money for a long enough period of time, and if you wait long enough for the right auction or the right thrifting trip, you can get almost anything you want. I say almost because obviously there are some things that the scalpers buy them up, or they're so old and you're just never going to find it. And maybe you know that. That's a judgment call on you. But patience is key. You've got to be willing to stick it out. And depending on how rare an item is, you may or may not be willing to do that. But you've got to have patience in an eBay auction. You've got to have patience when you are dealing with sellers on Facebook Marketplace. You've got to have patience when you're going to a thrift store every single week and they still don't have anything really cool Monster High. You've got to have patience. But patience is going to be your best friend. If you can just be patient and keep on hunting, you're going to find what you want. These are just important things to keep in mind as we explore the world of secondhand buying, because it is really good to keep your perspective in check of what you might find and what you might not find. Is finding the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive Frankenstein doll at a thrift store a chance? Yes, of course there's a chance of that, but is it likely? No. And you do have to keep your expectations in mind. And I even have some trouble doing this when I'm at a thrift store and I see Dracula's Roadster, for example, which I did buy, but when I see it and I start looking around for the doll, or I see something and I'm like, oh, maybe there's more pieces, maybe this is more complete. But no, I have to know that this thrift store probably only has this. At the end of the day, it shouldn't be a super big deal to find any of these things, and you might even have situations where you walk away from things, which is what we'll cover later in the series. But you do have to remember to keep your expectations at bay until you actually have secured an item. And then once you finally do pick up that Webkins or pick up that Monster High Dracula's Roadster for $3, and once you actually get out of the store, then you can be excited about it. Thank you all so much for watching and thank you all so much for listening, because this is not going to be watched. This will be listened to. And in the next episode, we'll be talking about eBay, the wonderful world of eBay.